If this is your first time watching one of my videos, thank you, and please stick around. If you have seen some before, you'll probably know that I'm on a quest to visit every presidential library, birthplace, and final resting place for all U.S. presidents, as my husband and I have started full-time RV living. While James A. Garfield does not have a modern, federally administered NARA presidential library, his family home in Mentor, Ohio, houses what is widely recognized as the nation's first presidential library and memorial. I recently visited with my lifelong best friend who lives in the Cleveland area, and while we weren't allowed to shoot video inside the actual house that holds the library or the visitor center, I can give you an outside walking tour and tons of pictures that I took from the interior of the home and visitor center, along with some fascinating information about a little-known president. What happened to him and how his death shouldn't have happened is shocking. So, how much do you know about James Garfield? His story is a tale of a presidency cut short, and I need to tell you a little bit more about the lead up to a short presidency before I tell you about the tragedy of his death. James Garfield purchased a farm in Mentor, Ohio in 1876 while serving as a congressman representing Ohio. At the time, he had already served as a Civil War general and had spent more than a decade in the U.S. House of Representatives. He and his wife, Lucretia Rudolph Garfield, wanted a larger home where they could raise their family of 5 children, away from the bustle of Washington, D.C. The property consisted of approximately 160 acres of farmland, orchards, and vineyards. He immediately began expanding the modest farmhouse into a comfortable Victorian residence. Although he never intended it to become a national landmark, Lawnfield, as it would come to be called, would soon become one of the most famous homes in America. The home's greatest historical significance came during the presidential election of 1880. James entered the Republican National Convention as a supporter of fellow Ohioan John Sherman rather than as a presidential candidate. After 35 inconclusive ballots failed to produce a nominee, convention delegates unexpectedly united behind Garfield on the 36th ballot. He accepted the nomination despite not actively seeking the office. Rather than embarking on an extensive speaking tour across the country like candidates do today, delegations from every corner of the United States traveled by train to Mentor to hear him speak on his front porch. Newspapers eagerly covered the events, printing his speeches nationwide. More than 17,000 visitors made the journey to the Garfield home during the campaign, transforming the quiet farm into the center of American politics. This innovative strategy became known as the Front Porch Campaign, a campaign style that would be later copied by candidates including William McKinley, who was also assassinated. Cleveland reporters began referring to the estate as Lawnfield, a name that has remained ever since. A name he hated, by the way. Anyway, James won the election and was inaugurated on March 4th, 1881. His presidency, however, lasted only 200 days, which is why many people today probably wouldn't be able to list him off the top of their heads. On July 2nd, 1881, he was shot by Charles Guiteau while waiting for a train in Washington, D.C. The story behind Guiteau is crazy and worth a video of its own, but I don't have enough footage to go into that story. Although Garfield's gunshot wounds were initially considered survivable, the repeated probing of the wounds by physicians using unsterilized fingers and instruments led to a severe infection. While it cannot be stated with absolute certainty that he would have survived, most historians and medical experts believe his chances would have been very good had he received modern or even cleaner medical care. Instead, many of the treatments intended to save his life introduced infection that ultimately caused his death 79 days after the shooting. Here are some of the major things Garfield's doctors did in an effort to save him, and one of these you're not going to believe. Lead physician Dr. Willard Bliss and numerous other doctors repeatedly inserted their bare, dirty fingers into the wound. Metal probes were also pushed deep into Garfield's body in an attempt to locate the bullet. At the time, doctors did not sterilize their hands or instruments, as many American physicians had not fully accepted Joseph Lister's germ theory and antiseptic methods. The repeated examinations introduced bacteria deep into Garfield's body, leading to widespread infection and abscesses. He had been struck by 2 bullets. One grazed his arm, while the other entered his lower back. Dr. Bliss had become convinced that the bullet had lodged on James' right side. Because of this mistaken belief, nearly every examination focused on the wrong area, causing additional tissue damage while failing to locate the bullet. As infection spread, he developed numerous pockets of pus. Doctors cut into his body and inserted drainage tubes to remove the infected fluid. While drainage itself can be beneficial, like I mentioned before, the procedures were performed before sterile surgical techniques were routinely practiced. New abscesses continued forming throughout his body. Doctors then tried rectal feeding. Yep, You heard me. Nutrient enemas like beef broth, milk, egg mixtures, even whiskey and brandy. This obviously didn't work, and the president lost nearly 100 pounds during his illness. One of the most fascinating episodes involved Alexander Graham Bell, inventor of the telephone. He quickly designed an early electromagnetic metal detector specifically to locate the bullet, and the device repeatedly indicated metal on the president's right side. Unknown to Bell, Garfield was laying on a bed supported by metal springs, which interfered with the readings. Dr. Bliss also allowed Bell to search only the right side because he remained convinced that that was where the bullet was located. Then, finally in September, Garfield had become extremely weak. His doctors believed that the cooler ocean air might improve his condition. President James Garfield died on September 19, 1881, in Elberon, New Jersey. The official cause of death included complications from infection, internal abscesses, and the rupture of an artery near the spleen caused by the bullet's path. His death became a powerful example of the importance of sterile surgical techniques. Ironically, the bullet was finally found during Garfield's autopsy, exactly where the doctors had failed to look throughout his illness. He was only 49 years old when he died. Now that you know all about his tragic death, let's get back to where I am today. This site is operated by the National Park Service and offers visitors one of the most authentic glimpses into the life of a 19th century president. It was the first stop in our day of travels, as unlike Eisenhower and Truman, insert shameless "I've done a video on each of them" plug, he was not buried on this historic site. Unlike many presidential residences that changed hands after the president left office, Lawnfield remained in the Garfield family for generations. This continuity helped preserve the home's authenticity. Recognizing the property's historical importance, the Garfield family donated the estate and many of its original contents to the Western Reserve Historical Society in 1936. Congress officially established the James A. Garfield National Historic Site on December 28, 1980, allowing the National Park Service to begin preserving the home as part of the National Park System. During the 1990s, extensive restoration projects returned the home to its appearance during Garfield's lifetime, using historical photographs, family records, and original furnishings as guides. Oh, and this is one of Aunt Shazzy's favorite type of museums, a free one. I have to mention that. Modern visitors begin at the Visitor Center before taking a ranger-guided tour through the Garfield home. The grounds include historic farm buildings, walking paths, gardens, and the water tower. A self-guided tour of the home is not an option. One of the highlights remains Garfield's Memorial Library, filled with thousands of books that reveal his remarkable intellect. He was fluent in several languages and possessed one of the finest personal libraries of any 19th century president. As I mentioned, he isn't buried on this historic site. James was actually buried in Cleveland's Lakeview Cemetery, where his magnificent memorial still stands today. And many of Ohio's most prominent citizens are also interred here, including the famous Eliot Ness. While other presidents have simple, respectful resting places, his is huge, and a docent told us that he and his wife have the only presidential gravesite where you can actually see the coffins as they are on pedestals, not buried in the ground. The mausoleum is located on one of the highest points in the cemetery. More than a century after its dedication, it remains one of Cleveland's most recognizable landmarks and an enduring symbol of Garfield's legacy. While supporters organized plans for a permanent memorial, the Garfield National Monument Association, led by Cleveland philanthropist Jephthah H. Wade, try saying that 4 times fast, raised funds from citizens across the country to construct a fitting tribute to a fallen president. Rather than simply commissioning an architect, the association held an international design competition, inviting submissions from the U.S. and Europe. The winning design came from Hartford, Connecticut architect George Keller, whose vision combined Romanesque, Gothic, and Byzantine architectural styles into a monumental circular tower unlike any other presidential tomb in America. Construction began on October 6, 1885, using locally quarried Berea sandstone. I love saying Berea, because I lived there for several years during college. Anyway, it took 5 years to complete. The memorial was formally dedicated on May 30, 1890, during an elaborate ceremony attended by thousands of spectators, President Benjamin Harrison, former President Rutherford B. Hayes, members of Garfield's family, and numerous government officials. Its commanding location offers sweeping views of Lake Erie and the Cleveland Skyline. Visitors ascend broad stone steps to reach the entrance, where they encounter intricate carvings and 5 massive bas-relief sculptures depicting key moments in Garfield's life, from his humble beginnings as a teacher to his military service, political career, and presidency. Did you know that he was president of Hiram College? I mention that because I went to Baldwin Wallace and they were an OAC rival of ours, so boo Hiram. Inside the memorial, the circular memorial hall is richly decorated with colorful mosaics, stained glass windows, marble columns, and an impressive white Carrara marble statue of Garfield sculpted by Alexander Doyle. The artwork reflects the ideals of patriotism, faith, and public service that Garfield embodied. The hall's ornate decoration was intended not only to honor the president, but also to inspire visitors with the values of democracy and civic responsibility. Below the memorial hall lies the crypt, where the President and First Lady Lucretia Garfield are entombed in matching granite sarcophagi. Also interred there is their daughter, Molly Garfield Stanley Brown, and her husband, Joseph Stanley Brown. The crypt is intentionally simple and solemn, providing a quiet contrast to the grandeur of the memorial above. The memorial has undergone several restoration efforts throughout its history. Weather, age, and Cleveland's harsh winters gradually affected the sandstone's exterior, stained glass, and interior mosaics. A major federally funded restoration took place in the 1980s, and additional preservation projects in the 21st century have repaired masonry, windows, and decorative elements to ensure the monument remains structurally sound for future generations. Although if you look around the crypt, there are definitely areas that need some attention. I mentioned that I wanted to see his birthplace as well, but we stopped for a bite to eat in Little Italy, taking up way too much time. It is right around the corner from the cemetery and something I strongly recommend doing. We went to a historic bakery called Presti's, which was established in 1903, so technically it's still in the world of history. This just means that I'm going to have to come back to Cleveland to visit the replica of his birthplace. Well, that's it for this video. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see more of Aunt Shazzy's adventures.